brother Pete Seeger was already famous as a member of the Weavers. But Mike's musical path stood in opposition to the commercial folk music of the era.
I played briefly bluegrass music with friends, but then I realized old-time Southern music really is what I wanted to play because it had so much history. It went back into the old songs.
In that bright land, there'll be no hunger, no orphan children crying for bread, no weeping widows toil or struggle, no shrouds, no coffin, and no death.
John Cohen recognized early on that the songs and even the instruments they played were attracting many younger people to old-time music.
When the Ramblers started in the urban movement, there was no fiddle players, no mandolin players, no auto harps. All that was introduced with the New Lost City Ramblers.
One of those young Ramblers fans was a guitar player from Santa Monica named Ry Cooder. He went to see the Ramblers play in Los Angeles and heard something different in their music.
They seem to have brought it forward from a point of antiquity and obscurity to something a little more in the present, and therefore a little more comprehensible. And I was trying to learn to play guitar, and I thought, okay, here's a way these guys did, so let me see if I can draft in behind them a little bit.
When we get our grocery bill, we just feel like making our will. Tell me, how can a poor man stand such times and live?
Ry Cooder began to learn the old songs and country blues the Ramblers found on early commercial records and field recordings. But the New Lost City Ramblers went beyond just imitating those records to find the sources of the music, says Ray Allen, a professor of music at Brooklyn College.
They studied how was the banjo tuned, how was it picked, how was the fiddle tuned, how was it bowed, and they tried to pick up all those subtle nuances of the instrumental tunings, the instrumental styles. So style became the essential hallmark of what the Ramblers did.
Mike Seeger visited with many of the musicians they heard on the early records. He remembers hearing Sarah Carter, of the Carter family, sing a song that later became a staple of the Ramblers' repertoire.
When we visited Sarah Carter, we'd sing a little bit, and she tolerated that. And then she sang Railroading on the Great Divide. And right after that, she said, boys, I'd love it if you all would sing that song. And I thought that was wonderful to have a song pitched to you by Sarah Carter.
Railroading on the Great Divide, nothing around me but Rockies and skies. There you'll find me as the years roll by, railroading on the Great Divide.
It was their love of playing music together and sharing the music that sustained the New Lost City Ramblers throughout a half-century of performing and recording. And as thousands of people across the country gather together to play old-time and bluegrass music at festivals and fiddlers' conventions, perhaps that's where the Ramblers have had their greatest impact, says Tracy Shores, who replaced Tom Paley in the group in 1962.
You could say that when you see like a little city full of people playing this music that we were working on digging out and bringing out to the world, really, the objective has been achieved.
I think the most amazing thing about the New Lost City Ramblers is that we've survived for 50 years as a group with only one change, and that we still have fun playing the music. I'm equally, in fact, I'm more satisfied for all the people who are playing music. That's the real satisfaction.
Mike Seeger, along with John Cohen and Tracy Shores, showed America that its musical roots were a vital and vibrant part of its culture and history. And along the way, they helped change the sound of folk music. For NPR News, I'm Keith Brand.
You can get a listen to the New Lost City Ramblers tribute CD before its official release at npr.org.
I've always been a rambler, my fortune's been quite hard. I always saw the women drink whiskey and play cards. My parents treated me kindly as they
This is All Things Considered.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations and from the Ford Foundation, a resource for innovative people and institutions worldwide, on the web at fordfound.org. From the George Lucas Educational Foundation, creator of Edutopia, presenting an in-depth look at the digital generation at edutopia.org. And from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, helping NPR advance journalistic excellence in the digital age. This is NPR, National Public Radio.
Your source for NPR News is KCUR-FM and KCUR-HD1 Kansas City. Coming up tonight on The World, a look at fraud and corruption in Afghanistan's upcoming presidential election. Russia arrests 8 alleged hijackers in the case of the missing cargo ship Arctic Sea. And find out what happens when Spanish flamenco meets hip-hop. That and more coming up on The World tonight at 7. We have an accident 35 southbound at Mission Road on the Kansas side, causing a backup past Cambridge Circle. Also a washdown of some fluid that spilled on the roadway 169 highway northbound at Briarcliff. This traffic report is a service of Preparation H, reminding you to use your turn signals when changing lanes, parking, or turning. Support for All Things Considered comes from the Harriman Jewel series. Its upcoming 45th season in downtown Kansas City includes Parsons Dance, the Russian National Orchestra, cellist Yo-Yo Ma, and more. Single tickets and event information are online at hjseries.org. And Commerce Bank, offering area businesses more than 144 years of commercial banking experience, as well as the safety and security needed in today's economic climate. Commerce Bank. Further support comes from the Kansas City Business Journal, offering daily email news updates. Details are online at kansascitybusinessjournal.com. The time is 6:01. An update of the news is next. I'm Linda Scher. Good evening. From NPR News in Washington, I'm Barbara Klein. The Taliban has claimed responsibility for a suicide car bombing in the Afghan capital that killed at least 7 people and wounded more than 50. From Kabul, NPR's Jackie Northam reports it was one of several attacks in the city today.
The most serious attack happened on the eastern edge of Kabul. A suicide bomber rammed his vehicle, loaded with explosives, into a convoy of Western troops, traveling along a road dotted with international aid and military bases. Among the dead and wounded are UN workers and international soldiers. Earlier in the day, a Taliban rocket landed at the presidential palace in the center of the city. Shortly after, another rocket struck police headquarters. By late afternoon, the streets of the capital were quiet, and there was uncertainty whether today's attacks were the start of a concerted campaign by the Taliban to disrupt Thursday's presidential election. International election monitors fear the attacks would keep Afghans from going to the polling booths. Jackie Northam, NPR News, Kabul.
President Obama expressed cautious optimism about restarting Mideast peace talks after meeting today with Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak. Mr. Obama said Egypt is uniquely positioned to help. Mubarak said he believes Arab states will support a process if Israelis and Palestinians sit down to talk. The Commerce Department reports a somewhat mixed picture in the housing market. Housing starts in July fell, including a record decline in groundbreaking for large